I'm so glad to be here today. How many people have actually been to Safari West? Oh, why am I here? You guys could come up and probably teach me some things. A lot of people in Sonoma County and the Greater Bay Area haven't actually heard of Safari West. I'm surprised by how many guests tell me that. And I think it's because there was a really conscious decision made by our owner and founder, Peter Lang, who said, I'm not going to advertise except word of mouth. Let the people who love Safari West tell others. Now, that was before the electronic age and social media and things like that, which we do, but no advertising ever on television, radio, magazine. So, Safari West. A really special place. I'm excited to tell you a little bit about the history and also the animals there, which is why we're all there. They're just amazing creatures. And I will give you just a paintbrush view because we do have approaching 1,000 animals at Safari West. And that's representing approaching 100 species. So try as I may, I won't be able to talk about them all. But let me give you a little background, and then I want to show you the animals that we care for and educate people about. So Peter Lang was born to a rather famous film producer and director, and also a ski instructor. His name is Otto Lang, and Peter grew up on movie sets in Hollywood. He had a lot of interaction with animals on those sets. One of the shows that Otto Lang produced was Atari, which some people may remember, an African-themed show with a very famous chimp in it. So Peter grew up around animals, always loved them. He really particularly loved hoofstock, and he started a cattle ranch in Beverly Hills, and it's literally known as the last cattle ranch in Beverly Hills. He moved from Beverly Hills to Santa Maria, and he started collecting exotic hoofstock to accompany his cattle. And he came up to Sonoma County and purchased the 400-acre property that Safari West is now found on. And he intended to possibly raise exotic breeds of cattle, things like Brahma or Watusi, but he already had these exotic hoof stock from Africa. And two and two got put together, and he ended up deciding on a safari theme park. And as he was researching out and understanding, like, what does it mean to run a zoo, he met Nancy. She was the ornithologist and educator at San Francisco Zoo, and through their consultations, they fell in love and married at Safari West and lived on the property for many years. So this team put together this really unique idea to bring the Serengeti to Sonoma County and offer tours. The very first thing to do was to get more animals on site, and giraffes are definitely one of our more charismatic residents at Safari West. They don't move giraffes like that anymore, actually. They have enclosed trailers because It's bad for their eyes and ears to, get the particles from the road, but they have very tall trailers for moving giraffes. And this is a picture of the very first safari. It was a ragtag group of different vehicles that went out to see this amazing collection that was being assembled. Well, I wish that I had included a picture of what today's safari vehicles look like. That was an oversight on my part. But a lot's changed in the way that we present our tours. And additionally, we've added accommodations on site. So the lower picture there is a tent cabin imported from Botswana. They have some creature comforts. They have flushing toilets, showers, and some electricity, but it's a tent. So it's kind of warm in the summer and cold in the winter, but fun. And you don't have a separation between the property and what you came there to see and hear. And many guests do tell me they hear things all night long. We provide earplugs. The top photo is our cafe. We have a very good restaurant that serves lunch and dinner, and it's a crowd pleaser menu. There's something for everyone on it, including children. They have a big fire where they smoke meats every day, and in the evenings they have coals going so that at 8:30 p.m. every night, all of our overnight guests or dinner guests can make s'mores. So, yeah, super fun, the tent cabins. And, you know, we have a lot of grandparents with their grandchildren there. And I think it's amazing to see the families, multi-generational. Sometimes the parents are there too. The children are out running around on the big lawn. It really warms my heart to be around there in the evening. And it always makes me feel like this is like Disneyland, but better. So, that is the current offerings in hospitality. But now on to what I love to talk about, which is the animals. So on a classic safari, for those two of you who haven't been on one yet, what we do is it's a 3-hour block of time, and we spend about 2 hours on the trucks, driving into open habitat areas. Open habitat means there's no physical separation between you and the animals. It's a very different kind of zookeeping. And then a 45-minute walking tour, a stroll around our lower compound. So out on the drive, it's all about hoofstock. It's about cows, giraffes, rhinos, the many species of antelope we have. On the walk, we keep our unbelievable bird collection as well as carnivores and primates. So that 3-hour block of time for the classic safari, and it's different every time. I say almost every day. I never saw that before. So we've got great animals. We don't have elephants. We just don't have enough flat ground for them. We're hilly. And also, if you keep elephants ethically, you need to keep at least 5, probably. They have pretty important social structure. So no elephants, but of course we do have giraffes. If you were on a truck, you might have a visitor come by A lot of times when you park a truck under a tree, and it's got a few leaves on it, well, we didn't mean to bait the giraffes in, but they do spot those leaves and come over to say hi. So the giraffes are one of our really charismatic species. We have a herd of about 11 right now. They range in age from our young Grace, who's now a year and a half old, to Mara, our oldest. She's turning 21 this summer. In herd society, you don't keep more than one mature male because these herd societies are kind of set up as harems for one alpha male to sort of keep as many females close to him as possible. So if we had two bull giraffe, they would fight. Giraffe fighting is known as necking. It's not the good kind. It's the kind where you swing your neck and head very violently, like a club, against the neck and body of another giraffe. These little prongs on the top of the head, those are called ossicones. Uh, they're not horns. I'm going to tell you a lot about horns, but horns are made of bone. These ossicones are made of ossified cartilage. So imagine if your nose or your ears filled in with hard minerals. Then you would have an ossicone. Now, horns have a hard covering of a substance called keratin, but the ossicones are covered with skin and hair, just like our ears and nose are. So the ossicones can dig in and rake against the opponent. And the tallest giraffe has the most weight and momentum in their swing. That means the tallest giraffe usually wins, and that leads to more tall giraffes. So we have a herd of all females, mothers and daughters. Now, I want to tell you what really our core mission is at Safari West. We do care deeply about teaching, conservation, and sustainability, but our number one mission is conservation breeding. So we need to mix up our herd all the time for fresh genetics. We can't allow inbreeding on site. So we'd had a bull giraffe. Here he is. That's Kubwa's tongue. And he was there for about 7 years. He had a lot of offspring, half brothers and sisters. Well, came a time when Kubwa had to go. And so we traded with a zoo in Texas. One day, a very tall trailer backed up to the very tall barn, and Mango got off and Kubwa got on. And they each have new homes with new girlfriends. So conservation breeding means you ultimately separate offspring from mom and dad, or you remove dad and any young sons. You keep mixing up your genetics because we are an ark. We hold the repository of genetic information for species that may be critically endangered or even extinct in the wild. And it's come to pass many times that we rely on animals bred in captivity to rehome back to the wild. So they better represent the gene pool of that population if they're to survive and persist through time. Okay, so back to Kubwa's tongue. Giraffes have a very long tongue. The rule of tongue is for every foot of giraffe height, there's about an inch of tongue in that mouth. Now, giraffes can get up to about 18 feet tall, and that means a 1.5 foot long tongue. that's a good extension of their reach. They already have reservations at a restaurant that no one else can eat at. They can extend their reach even further into the upper canopy. Their tongue is prehensile, just like our finger, and can wrap around the stems of leaves and draw them into the mouth. So giraffes use their tongue a lot. When they're browsing in the wild, it could be out of their mouth for 16 hours, 18 hours a day. And that means you need some sun protection. So the dark color you see on the underside of the tongue, which is usually the direction that's being turned towards the light, has melanin pigment built into it, just like our skin does to protect us from sunburn. So a bluish black tongue, a long one, and a long neck to boot. I do have a giraffe prop here. So cervical vertebrae are the neck bones, and there are in mammals a very standard number, 7 cervical vertebrae. And ours are little flattened pancakes, but a giraffe cervical vertebrae is about a foot long. So you get necks that tend to be 6 to 7 feet long, and then they have legs that are 6 to 7 feet long. So we get up to 18 feet pretty quickly. And giraffes are amazing, and I could stand here and talk about them forever, but we got 1,000 animals to cover. So I'm going to move on and go back to Peter's #1 passion, which are cows, and hoofstock, which giraffes are as well. So the next series of slides are all pictures of animals that come from the Bovidae family, the bovids. What do all bovids have in common, and who are they? Okay, what all bovids have are horns, hooves, and a ruminant stomach. They have a cow stomach, multi-chambered. They ruminate, which means you swallow your food, mixes with some saliva and bacteria, and then the big pieces get regurgitated back into your mouth. You chew them some more to grind up that food, expose more surface area for your friendly gut bacteria to help you digest. Plants are made of a really tough carbohydrate called cellulose. Us mammals don't have an enzyme to take apart cellulose. It just passes through our body as roughage. We rely on bacteria in our guts to help us digest cellulose. And in our guts, some cellulose is digested, but these animals live on it. So they have to have a much more formal mechanism for breaking that cellulose down. So cows, sheep, goats, and antelope are in the Bovidae family. Those are the only animals that have true horns. Okay, so what is a horn? A horn is made of living bone covered with keratin. Okay, so this particular skull is of a wild sheep called an aoudad. And I can remove the keratin sleeve to expose the bone. This is living bone. It's called spongy bone. It has a blood supply. It has nerve endings. Horns are permanent. If you break them, you bought them. They don't grow back. So you protect the bone with the keratin sleeve. So again, cows, sheep, goats, and antelope, they all have this kind of headgear. So back to cows, these particular cows are called Cape buffalo. And they are a wild cow from sub-Saharan Africa, the Cape, the southern part of Africa. And Cape buffalo are definitely considered potentially dangerous animals. Not very many zoos keep them in their collection. The reason that they're considered dangerous is because they're big. The males can weigh up to 2,000 pounds. They have those extremely dangerous hooked horns that they can grab, toss, and just throw right over their shoulder, anything that's threatening them. And lastly, they're very loyal to other members of their herd. So you never take on one Cape buffalo. If you threaten any member, you have to answer to the entire herd. So they are pretty fierce and protective of each other. We've been seeing a good example of that the last week because our dominant cow, our lead cow, Ivy, had a calf. And the way it works in Cape Buffalo society is females, mature females, are the wayfinders. They lead the herd. They know where the good food and water is. Bulls in the back, they're the security detail, and the herd surrounds the young ones that stay sheltered in the middle. So Ivy has decided she doesn't want her calf to be around the trucks, any other animals. So she's led them off into a part of the park we call Hidden Valley, making it very difficult to see Cape Buffalo. And they all stay with her because they function as a herd. So that's our Cape Buffalo. Peter also keeps some of the exotic breeds of hoof stock that he started with. These are Watusi cattle. They're not in our exhibit, so to speak. We keep them on the back 100 acres. They manage the grasslands for us. That's why we didn't have devastating loss in our wildfire in 2017. Low fuel loadings on the back acreage of the property, beautiful spring wildflowers and native grasses this time of year. Watusi were bred for their horns. We bred against horns for most of our cattle breeds in this country for both meat and milk. I mean, who'd want to milk a Watusi, right? You get your eye poked out. But it turns out they do milk Watusi. They're very gentle breed. And so with those massive horns, remember, there's living tissue in there. There's bone, there's blood. So they must be very heavy. The Watusi have a huge hump on the back of their neck for all the muscle attachments to hold up that head. So those are the Watusi, our two cow species. We have one member of the Soprinidae family, which is sheep and goats. This is called the Aoudad or Barbary sheep. And this is the skull that I just showed you of an Aoudad. And they are found in the rugged Atlas mountain range in northern Africa. Much like our bighorn sheep, they love a vertical habitat. I see them typically at the end of the day. They're down in the canyon for most of the day, but they come up in the late afternoon to the feeders. They're very wily and skittish, but we can get good looks at them, and they have so many offspring right now, tons of lambs. Okay, well, on to antelope, because we love our antelope at Safari West. We have over a dozen species. Now, all of the mammals, as I'm sure you've already figured out, are from Africa. Africa is a big continent with a lot of different habitat types. This particular antelope is a desert antelope. It's called the gemsbok, and it is designed for desert living. It has a light colored coat. Light colors reflect heat instead of absorbing it. There's a pinkish tinge to that coat. That's because where this animal comes from in the southern countries of Africa, the Kalahari and Namib deserts have red sands. So that's a bit of a camouflage color for that habitat. White underbelly to reflect heat coming up from the sand. but it's those horns that are the giveaway for a desert antelope. Anytime you see long, skinny horns, that's probably an animal using their horns primarily for water conservation. Here's how it works. A long, skinny horn has a lot of surface area relative to the internal volume, which means the blood is very close to the outside. Blood travels up those long, skinny horns. Heat escapes out of the blood and cooler blood returns to the body. It can be up to 5 degrees cooler. That's a game changer in a place that has a hot, dry climate. So people think of deserts as hot, and they can be. It can also be very cold. At night, without cloud cover to insulate heat, deserts get very cold, but mostly what deserts are dry. Less than 2 inches of precipitation annually is kind of the marker of a desert habitat. So if you're an animal living in such a dry place, you may not find water to drink for days, weeks, months at a time, which means you're not going to waste water sweating to cool off. You cool off with your horns. Those are air conditioning units. So that's the Gemsbok. Here is the wildebeest. You know, when the Dutch went to Africa and saw wildebeest, they didn't know what to make of it. They'd never seen antelope before. So they called it the wildebeest, the wild beast. That's the best they could do. Wildebeest are said to be assembled from the spare parts of every other animal of creation. They have the tail of a lion, the stripes of a zebra, the hump of a hyena, the mane of a wild horse, the horns of a buffalo, the beard of a goat, and the face of a baboon. And they're just such an amazing antelope. You know, of the 100 or so species of antelope in the world, about 80 of those species come from Africa, the rest from Eurasia. And the wildebeest is the heart of the Great Migration. The largest terrestrial movement of animals in the world occurs every year in Eastern Africa, where a mega herd of over 2 million animals goes on a long march. They cover up to 1,500 miles in kind of a big elliptical in Eastern Africa. Why are they walking so far? They're in search of food. They follow the rainy season south, and as it dries up in the south, they turn around and head north again. So they're pretty much on the move the entire year. And with that giant nose of theirs, wildebeest can smell water in the air and in the ground at about 40 miles. We can smell rain too. When rain hits the ground, it interacts with dust particles and bacteria living in the soil. It has a very distinct smell for us, but not from 40 miles away. So wildebeest move towards the smell of water, knowing food will be there. The other animals know, so they follow the wildebeest. Lots of other species of antelope, as well as zebras, sometimes giraffes are there, sometimes Cape buffalo, and every predator in Eastern Africa, because this is a walking buffet. So we've got cheetahs and hyenas and wild dogs and leopards, and every time they cross a river, the crocodiles go after them. Do you ever have to cross a crocodile-infested river? Go first. Your chances are statistically better. Once there's a lot of animals in the water, that draws more attention from the crocodiles, and then the bank gets really slippery on the other side, and it's hard to get out. So be bold. So that's the wildebeest. And then here's a roan antelope. I should give photo credits. I took this picture. I happened upon a roan about 5 minutes after she gave birth. And but most of the pictures were taken by my coworker, Mark, who is in charge of all of the great photographs on our website. You can look at all these animals and learn about them all thanks to him. So that young roan, just born, mom was kind of cleaning it off. And then I went on safari. I started a next safari about a half an hour later, and there it was standing, taking its first little wobbling steps. So if you live in the grasslands of Africa, you better get on your feet quickly because, of course, a lot of predators to deal with. So roan antelope, they have horns that are worn like this. This is just the keratin covering of a roan horn. And so their primary function is to defend. Number one predator of roan are lions. If you've got a lion on your back, you can throw your head back, possibly knock that lion off and live to eat grass another day. And roan have been documented to kill lions. They get in a lucky shot every now and then. So the roan antelope is sometimes called the lion killer. This is another desert antelope, but this one comes from the white sands of the Sahara. It's called the Addax antelope. It is a critically endangered species. I have its skull here too. Again, beautiful, skinny corkscrew horns. Do you see all these ridges on here? These are called annulations. They're designed to increase the surface area as well. It's just more space for heat to escape. So anywhere blood goes, heat is lost. That's why our fingers and toes tend to get colder than the core of our body, right? So this is the Addax antelope. I didn't end up including a picture of the scimitar horned oryx, but like the addax, these animals are critically endangered and being captive bred and rehomed back to Africa. The scimitar horned oryx actually went fully extinct in the wild in the year 2000. And it was only because of its popularity and being in zoos and collections that they were able to captive breed these animals. Now, we always know who's related to who. There's a meticulous record kept. Therefore, we could bring together individuals that would do a good job representing the gene pool of that population. And as of today, the scimitar horned oryx is gaining in number. Not out of the woods yet, but they are still here on planet Earth. And that is good because biodiversity does matter. I'll come back to that. So Addax antelope with a young calf. Here's a bongo. His name is Bingo. This is Bingo the bongo. There are two populations. One comes from the Congo. Ours doesn't. Otherwise, it would be Bingo the bongo from the Congo. But this one comes from the Kenyan highlands. Now, here's a couple of things to note. One, horns for protection. This animal has leopards to deal with. White vertical stripes, that's called disruptive camouflage, breaks up the overall body mass and blends in with upright vegetation. And then also red color. That's the camouflage color for the forest. You'd think they'd be better off with green, but there's no such thing as green fur. Red's the next best alternative because their predators are red-green colorblind. So Bingo the bongo, not from the Congo. Here's the largest and smallest antelope we have, just to give you an idea of diversity. The eland antelope is the big guy there. That's the bull. They can get up to over 1,000 pounds. And then the little blue diker is a 10-pounder. Pretty amazing antelope diversity. And that's not even the smallest. The royal antelope and the dik-dik are both smaller, slightly smaller than the blue diker. But we have these blue dikers living in our aviaries with the bird collections, and they spend a lot of time hiding, but I do see them pretty regularly, especially in the evening. Okay, that's my last antelope slide. So I want to go on, but I want to show you one other impressive antelope horn, because one thing I didn't talk about yet, and I neglected to put a slide of a kudu antelope. Okay, so this is the horn of a kudu. I mean, I could do curls with this. It's really heavy. And it's only the boys that grow horns in this species. So again, about 100 species of antelope in the world. Of those 100 species, about 30 of those species, horns are found on males only. What that tells us is that this is designed to distress other males and impress the ladies and get the girlfriends. So having something big and heavy like this on your head, I mean, you have to be a big, strong guy. So they're basically proving that and hoping to be chosen. So male kudus, a spiral horned antelope. Okay, but moving on to other hoof stock, one of our other really signature species are white rhinos. This is young Otto. He was born on April 2nd. He just had his first birthday. We've been celebrating all month. This was very close to his birthday. He was just a little guy, only weighed about 100 pounds. Isha was pregnant for just shy of 17 months, and this was her first calf. We'd waited a long time for this little blessing. Isha is a very discerning female. We've had 2 other male rhinos in the last decade. She didn't like them. So they got sent away, and we eventually got a guy she liked. And now we have a baby rhino who's growing quickly. We actually weighed him on his first birthday. They got a brand new scale. Our old scale, he topped out at 800. That was the best the scale could do. So they got a new scale. They weighed him on his first birthday, 1,137 pounds. Mama there weighs closer to 6,000. This is the largest of the 5 rhino species in the world, and also the largest animal that walks on land with the exception of elephants. Now, note her horn, because it's kind of unusual. A traditional rhino horn is curved up and probably not quite that long. The animal care staff had actually filed off the end. You see how it's blunt? It was getting so long, it was interfering with her eating. And it's gotten really long again. That was probably about, well, that was about a year ago. And so they're probably going to do it again. But you see how you can almost see how there's hair-like fibers on that horn? That's keratin. There's no bone in that horn. It's not a true horn. It doesn't have spongy bone in it like antelope horns do, like cow horns and sheep and goat horns. It's made of solid keratin. So it's this stuff, this hard covering, except it's solid and it's worn on the nose. So that's what rhinoceros means. Rhino is nose and ceros is horn. So 2 horns on the nose made of solid keratin, which is a material that can be shaped, just like we can file our nails flat or rounded. We can cut our hair long or short. That's just her style. She's a little unusual. So we have keratin everywhere, and I brought a couple other things to remind me of that. The outer covering of horns is keratin. Feathers are made of keratin. This is the shell of a tortoise that we have on the property, a big sulcata tortoise. That's keratin. Skin is made of keratin, whether it is a snake or our own skin. Talons are made of keratin, and hooves are made of keratin. So here's the hoof of an animal. I'm going to show you in just a minute. But hooves are made of keratin. This is a fingernail, is basically what a hoof is. That's a fingernail. Okay, so we have our southern white rhinos. We now have 3. They're actually already testing Isha's poop. They asked us guides, they're like, if you see Isha poop, let us know. They want to collect a sample and see if it has hormones in it, where, you know, she could potentially be pregnant again. There's our little guy sitting in his breakfast. He's just been so fun to watch grow. You know, rhinos, they look like they'd be related to elephants, maybe? Hippos, maybe? They're not. They are, in fact, more closely related to zebra than any other animal on planet Earth. It's all about the foot. They're an odd-toed ungulate, so are zebra. They have an odd number of toes, 1. This is the middle finger. All the other digits have, I'm going to be careful not to flip you off. All the other digits have receded through evolutionary time in their splint bones in the forelimbs. So zebra walk on the nail of the middle finger and toe. We have 1 stallion in our herd, all girls, except for 1 young male foal who was born last year. And zebra are pretty amazing. Here's one of the little foals. That they have these, so they're members of the equine family related to horses and donkeys. Unlike horses and donkeys, they have not been fully domesticated. If you jumped on a zebra's back, you'd hurt it. They're not bred to hold a rider. It took a long time to get horses strong enough to do that. Horses have been domesticated for over 6,000 years, donkeys even longer. But mostly you would invoke all their response to a predator and they'd kick you off, and then they'd probably bite you once you were laying on the ground. They're pretty feisty. They have to be. They have big predators where they come from. So how do they stay safe? Well, of course, they can run, kick, and bite, and they can also rely on camouflage. Now, these stripes seem pretty easy to see, but not when you're standing in a herd. It's called dazzle camouflage. A whole herd of zebras standing side by side will make it difficult for a predator to decide where does one stop and the next begin. And predators have to pick one, and they pick the one that looks easiest to catch. It's either young, sick, or injured. So if you're in a herd and the predator can't see you as separate from the rest of the herd, that's going to help. Once the zebras start running, that dazzle effect takes over to confuse the predator further and to make it harder to judge size, speed, and direction of movement, so they miss their mark more frequently. One other thing about stripes, well, maybe 3 other things. Each striping pattern is unique, as identifiable as our fingerprints are to us. The stripes extend into the upright mane. That's another little trick, because if you've got a predator biting the back of your neck, it may just end up with a mouthful of hair. So it misleads you to think that the neck is bigger than it is. And then also, zebra get protection from biting insects from their stripes. Anecdotally, people had noticed going back a long time that zebras just don't seem to have as many flies on them as other animals in the mixed herd do. So they hypothesized maybe it has something to do with the stripes. But of course, in science, you need to collect evidence to either support or reject your hypothesis. So they set up an experiment. They got a big herd of black cows. Half of the cows they left black as a control to compare to, and half of the cows they painted with white stripes to simulate a zebra. And then they counted flies. And the cows that had been painted with zebra-like stripes got 1/4 as many flies land on them. So flies will hover, but maybe they're confused. Should I land in the black or the white? I don't know. I'm just not going to land. So they get protection, and there's a lot of nasty biting insects in Africa that spread disease, etc. So that is a true advantage. So that's our horse of a different color. We are going to now switch to primates. We have 4 species of primates currently on the property. Primates are the order of mammals that include lemurs. This is a ring-tailed lemur here, monkeys, apes, and of course, humans. So this is our distant cousin. Lemurs are found in one place only, the island of Madagascar. There's over 100 species of lemurs on that island, basically a lemur for every job. They've adaptively radiated out into every niche on the island. So they do everything, live everywhere, eat anything, have very different behaviors based on where their niche is. Then we also have our pigs. We've got warthog at the top there and red river hog down below. Warthogs have those huge tusks. Those are the canine teeth. They use them for defense, and that's important because everybody loves pork. So you have warthogs with big fleshy bumps on their face. That is the word of the warthog. It's cartilage and fat that's designed to protect the face should a predator come in by claw or jaw. Red river hogs are forest pigs. So again, the theme of red is the camouflage color for the forest. We have carnivores. The biggest carnivore is the cheetah. Peter specifically decided to not keep animals that were dangerous to staff on property. So cheetahs, no human fatality ever associated with them. Amazing animals, fastest terrestrial animals reaching speeds of 70 miles an hour for short periods of time. Their acceleration is even more impressive. They take off like a race car. They move from 0 to 60 in about 3 seconds. All kinds of adaptations to allow them to do that. But look at that long, lean beauty. Look at those tiny little jaws. They gave up everything for speed. We've got other felines, 2 small cats from Africa, the caracal and the serval. Cheetahs built for speed, caracals built for jumping. They can spring up over 10 vertical feet. They're tough little hunters. They can take down prey up to 3 times their size and literally snatch birds out of the air. And by the way, you see how they have this tufted ear? That's really common in ear talkers, animals that talk with their ears. They can micro-position their ears to send messages to other caracal cats. And maybe having a little tassel or a tuft is just like a flourish on the end of their sentence or something. Fennec foxes, oh, the cutest little canine you've ever seen. They're from the Sahara Desert. Those giant ears are air conditioners. Fennec foxes have these oversized ears. Not only do they have great hearing, but They can also lose heat that way. They live in a very dry place. Can't leave the bird collection out. Now we have birds from Africa, but actually it's an international collection because birds where the ladies touch. So ostriches, here they are trying to drive my truck. So I did have a picture of a safari truck after all. But they're a lot of fun. I'm just going to leave it at that. All kinds of crane species, Saurus crane, the crowned crane from Eastern Africa, the beautiful damoiselle crane, highest flying bird in the world, migrates over the Himalayan mountain range. Flamingos, 3 of the 6 species in the world. Nice view of the beak there with the strainer plates built in. Flamingos strain algae and bacteria out of the water. That's what contains beta carotene. That's what makes them pink. Spoonbills, roseate spoonbill from the Everglades, African spoonbill. We don't have any fork or knife bills, in case you were wondering. Here's 3 species of ibis. We've got this grand walk-through aviary. I am telling you, you have birds under your feet. It's amazing. The aviary alone is worth coming for. These are the wildfowl that run around everywhere on the grounds. They're unclipped, unhoused. We don't really care for them per se. They just make a living eating out of other animals' feeders. Red jungle fowl from India, that's the wild chicken, the mother of all modern chicken breeds, and guinea fowl from Eastern Africa. Okay, I'm going to switch gears. I only have a few minutes left, and I have a couple of other things I want to show you beyond our collection. One is our conservation biology efforts on property. We have Western pond turtles. We're putting in turtle rafts for them to bask. We have cavity nesting birds. We're helping them by putting up a lot of nest boxes. We have cover boards to see who's living on our property so we can manage accordingly. And most importantly, we're starting to experiment with oak regeneration. We have very poor oak regeneration because we have so many hungry mouths that are going to eat acorns and seedlings. So we need to understand how best to have trees on our property in perpetuity, and we're getting that information now. We have an osteology department. That's a giraffe skull, by the way. They were kind enough to loan me these today. But let me talk about, for just a minute at the end here, our nonprofit, Safari West Wildlife Foundation. We raise money to do 3 different programs. One is called Discover Africa, where we provide busing and cover the cost for low-income school districts to come out and see the animals. These are children who have never even been to the coast before, let alone know anything about Africa or have been to zoos. So that is the Discover Africa program. We also fund a junior zookeeper program so we can have high school age students come out every Saturday and Sunday who are interested in zoo trade. They can learn about whether or not they actually like it or not. It's a hard job. And then lastly, the program I work on, which is Safari West Live, where we have 2 guides working. One is in the studio with a table full of things to talk about, and the other is in the field. And we drive around, we look for animals, our camera person is with us. Everything goes live to children in hospitals across the nation. So if you're a kid living long-term in a hospital, you're going to have some entertainment. And that's it.
Is that all?
Thank you.
So we're going to take questions for Denise, and Lynn and I will be passing around the mics. Please talk into the microphones. And here's our first question.
In the case of antelopes especially, do you have to worry about crossbreeding in the animals?
Not too much, but yes, and it has happened. We had a bongo antelope years ago, not bingo, another bongo. And it turns out that bongos are very good jumpers. Well, that bongo jumped over a 6-foot tall fence and impregnated one of our female kudu. And we do, in fact, have on property molasses, who is a bongadoo. Now, that wasn't supposed to happen, and we're not proud about it. But so that can be a concern if animals are closely enough related.
So my question has to do with artificial insemination.
Mhm.
Do you do much of that at Safari West?
To my knowledge, I can't think of a single instance where we did it, but that may be before my time there. So mostly it's about letting nature take its course and making sure that only animals who are appropriate matches meet up.
How long does a tour take of Safari West?
The classic tour is 3 hours long. It is 2 hours on the truck, 1 hour walking. And we do have some other tour offerings, including what they call Fast Cat Alley, where you go and meet the felines. One is called the Rhino Experience, where you go and meet the rhino. And one is called Behind the Scenes, where it's actually pretty fun, especially for kids, because you get to feed some of the animals. And those are all 1 hour tours. If you have children under 4, that's our age limit, mostly just because 3 hours is a big ask for a 4-year-old. So families with young children often book a private safari. And once you're on a private, you can do it long, short, go where you want to, focus on what you want to, guides at your disposal.
I have 2 questions about the breeding program.
Yes.
I know there are breeding programs all over the world, and the first question is, how successful are those at replenishing all the animals that are killed every year?
Yeah.
And the second question is are there good places where they're successful at breeding elephants? Because they're one of the big animals dying out.
Yeah. So I think that captive breeding efforts in no way can keep up with loss in the wild. We need to make some changes about the way we manage our wildlands. We're in a biodiversity crisis right now. We're losing species at an astonishing rate, and there's multiple factors for that. The biggest is habitat loss and fragmentation, followed by actually introduced species that will outcompete or otherwise harm native species to a region. Pollution is a factor, overtake is a factor. Elephants, because we don't have any at Safari West, I have sparse knowledge about breeding programs for elephants specifically, but I do know a lot of zoos have rethought whether or not they want to keep elephants. There's big programs in Africa, so probably that's where the money is. And I'll just mention that part of the ticket price for everyone who visits Safari West does go to conservation organizations in Africa, because that's where the work really matters to protect the species we love.
So
What-
Denise, do you, are you like a repository of genetic material just to get us? keep the
Absolutely. I mean,
genetic material
all
going?
zoos should function as an arc for genetic populations. We are once again zoo accredited, and so conservation breeding is a mandate. It's not a choice. And that is becoming increasingly common.
And what is the cost of a ticket price?
Okay, I have to think about that for just a second, because I might be outdated, but I think adult ticket price is somewhere just above $100, and youth are something like $30 less. It's not an inexpensive ticket, I grant you, But we are an expensive operation. I mean, the feed alone, the amount of staff we have on hand during the summer months, we have 300 employees on site. So it's a big operation.
I've heard there's an overnight program,
Yes, so
a hotel.
you can book a tent cabin and stay overnight, as many do. And it's pretty fun and festive. You have full access to the lower grounds. So a lot of people go out with flashlights at night to see the nocturnal animals. Dinner in the cafe, as I mentioned. Yeah, in the summer months, it's pretty sweet.
Do we have any other questions? Denise, thank you so much for
Oh,
coming from
yay.
Safari West,
Thank you
our
for having
favorite,
me.
our neighbors, Africa in Sonoma.